Today's lesson is about thumbnail drawings. The big idea here has to do with the way our vision works. So let me make myself a little bigger here. Whoops, that's no good. Okay, so as you've heard me talk about before, and you can do this yourself, our cone of focus is very small. So if you stare straight ahead at one point and bring your fingers in towards each other, by the time you can really count your fingers, they're about this far apart, which means your cone of focus is about like this, okay? It's pretty small. And if you are if you're like leaning over a table drawing something, because it's a cone, the closer it is to your eyes, the smaller it gets, right? So the amount on a tabletop, the area that you can keep in focus at one time is about this big. Okay, and that's about the size of a typical thumbnail drawing. It's not actually the size of your thumbnail. That would be a little ridiculously small, right? But it's really about this big. Why does it matter that you keep it in focus is the next question. And it matters because you can only assess relationships of what you can see all at once. So if your eye is scanning something, you can see it all, but you can't assess the relationships within that area. Does that make sense? It's like there's a side of your brain, the right side of your brain perceives things in a manner that's called Gestalt, which is a German term, and it means sort of all at once, Gestalt. And we can only assess designs with the right side of the brain, and the way we assess them is, boom, all at once. So basically, if you're working on something large, you have the illusion that you're seeing it all in focus at one moment, because everywhere you look is in focus. But in fact, you're assembling that image sequentially by looking around at different parts. You're never seeing it all at once. And so you can't assess the relationships very well. That's why so often people will work really hard on a drawing, think it looks perfect as long as they stay near it, and then they hang it on the wall and look at it from far away. Suddenly they can see the relationships and it looks bad. So it's really important to work small when you're trying to arrive at a design. And then when you do blow up your design onto a larger surface, you have to do so with discipline. Like, that's why artists will grid it up. Because the decisions that you make on a large scale are not going to be as good as the decisions you make on a small scale. Not in terms of rendering. Rendering is how we make things look real, but in terms of designing. You understand the difference there? Really crucial difference. I've had so many students over the years who learn how to produce great designs on a small scale and produce great thumbnails, and then I'll say, that's a great design, go ahead and draw that one. And then when they draw it full size, it gets terrible. What happened? They thought they could improve it. They thought, oh, well, yeah, no, I just thought it would look better if I moved this over here, or if I raise the horizon a little. I'm like, no, can you see it always looks worse, okay? You're going to come up with great decisions small, and you're not going to improve them when you're working full size. Now, the exception is if you need to compose on a large surface, like a lot of abstract painters used to do, some still do, you can work at an easel, and run back and forth across the room all the time, which is what I used to do when I was an abstract painter. Okay, I had a huge painting on one side of the room, and I needed to have a huge studio space. I worked in basements or attics, anywhere where I could like get 20 feet away from it. And I would run all the way back to the other side of the room, get the whole giant painting inside my cone of focus, assess the relationships, decide what I was going to do next, and then run all the way across the room again. And I even had, like a lot of abstract painters will tie their brushes onto long sticks so that they can actually work on an area from a greater distance. And that's so that they can have more of it in the cone of focus as they're making those choices. Okay? If we're not abstract painters and we're not improvising, we don't have to do that. We can create thumbnails instead and achieve just as good effects with much less physical exertion, right? But it's really key that you understand why these are small. It's not random. There's a reason that they're small. Okay, so let's take a look at some student thumbnails of my students. And that first one, wait a second. Okay, what happened? Okay, so this is student Anna Donato, who graduated a few years ago. Yes, you may. This was we used to do the thumbnails in the Commons. This was her first try. She's a really good artist. I could show you other work that she's done that would blow you away. One of the things to get over when you're doing thumbnails is making everything look pretty and perfect. Because you're doing these tiny little drawings, they're not going to be fully shaded and detailed, and they're going to look a little bit crude, and you just have to get over yourself and go for it. This was her first try. It's not a thumbnail drawing because it doesn't have a frame around it. Okay, it's what we'd call a study. She's just trying to figure out if she's able to draw this, and at some point she gave up, or I came over and told her it wasn't a thumbnail, and instead of cropping it, she just went on to another one. So let's see if this works. Yes. These are thumbnail drawings. This is a standard size sketchbook, so these drawings are all, about 3 by 4 inches, and she is still exploring vanishing points and perspective, but she's cropping the drawings and trying to come up with designs. And I chose her as an example because it's just a wonderful sequence. You can see the way she's thinking about her work and the way it's improving. And there's something a little careless about it, but it's that's what we're after. Just don't be. It's not worth stressing about these. You just want to. It's about being productive and getting a lot of them done.
Do you crop before or after you draw?
That's a great question. Question is, do you crop before or after? And I would encourage you to just start drawing and then crop after. Okay, this one is not cropped. This again is just kind of a study. This is a couple potential croppings. A couple more. You see they're getting a little more refined as she goes on. This is over a period of about 2 weeks. So you see the improvement. It's like really striking how much more productive she was getting and how these improve. And she's getting more confident with perspective, I think. And, okay, these are out of order, sorry. Okay, so the next one I want to show you is this one. Here's an example of 2 thumbnails done for a final project for ECE, the narrative drawing, and you can see that they're messy and they barely look like a person, but these are actually really good thumbnails. It's a very important stage of the project, even if it doesn't look like much here. I'm going to show you the final project that came out of this, so you can see where this skill can lead. What we tend to appreciate about a drawing like this is the quality of what we call the rendering. The shading's beautiful, the details are beautiful, the expression, but I just want you to appreciate that the design is an equally important element. If we look back and forth a couple times at the kind of thinking that was going into these thumbnail sketches, you can just appreciate how important the decisions are that went into a project like this. We're going to look at a few more series of thumbnails. Notice that this person drew 3 different arrangements of cylinders, and let's see if I can make this a little bigger for you. Didn't like this one enough to crop. She put a little X by that one. And in this, she's experimenting with a vertical framing and with a horizontal framing. Same over here. And that's a good idea. You should experiment with more than one way of cropping your designs. And you can do it all on the same page. You don't need to redraw everything by any means. And we're going to look at the next one. This is another pair of drawings for the same project. And you can see how freely she's experimenting with different croppings. This is for a different project. A couple pages of thumbnails. I don't seem to have the final thumbnail for this project, but again, see what's going on here. Setting something up, experimenting with cropping, and then trying something else. And that happens to be the final project that came out of some of those drawings. When you get really good at thumbnail drawings, it's a good idea to put a bunch of them on a sheet like you see it's happening here, because you can use a page like this for your AP portfolio. You can use a page like this for your college portfolio. People who look at your work love to see evidence like this, that you're actually solving authentic visual problems and not just drawing something that somebody sort of set up for you. So I would call this an exemplary set of thumbnails, and definitely would be a strong addition to any portfolio. This was a very gifted student who really thought through what this design was going to be. You can see this was the final design. You can tell because she put a little grid on there. She's going to grid it up onto her final page. And we go here. Here's another one that she decided not to go with. I think the final one is the gridded one. And here's another one that she didn't even bother cropping. And here's the final painting that came out of those thumbnails. And again, most people are going to look at this and just be really blown away by the rendering, just how realistic the folds are and the metal and the texture of the squash, shadow on the wall and everything else. But none of it's really worth doing unless the design is strong. And the design is strong because she did those thumbnail drawings. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to create some thumbnail drawings of your own that involve perspective studies. You want to begin with a perspective study and then crop it 2 or 3 different ways, and be ready to submit those to me. And don't get hung up on creating a beautiful page of thumbnails like you just saw until you get a little better. I'll talk to you.